Hi, everyone. Let's go through IXL assignment 7YN, evaluate numerical expressions involving integers. So when we're dealing with numerical expressions, one of the things that comes to mind is essentially that means we're dealing with order of operations. There are several different mnemonics that you can use. You've maybe heard of PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, or maybe you've heard of GIMDAS. My favorite one is actually GEMS. But no matter which one of these mnemonics you use, the order is still the same. It's still starting with grouping symbols. And a lot of times when we think of grouping symbols, we initially think of parentheses because that is our main one. But it does include other grouping symbols like brackets and absolute value bars and even fractions can all fall under the category of a grouping symbol. So grouping symbols is always the first thing we need to deal with. Then second would be exponents. So here are some examples of exponents. Remember, that's that small little number at the top. And then the bottom two steps are multiplication and division, and then addition and subtraction. The key thing to remember about these is it's not necessarily that multiplication comes before division. It's that you do any multiplication or division from left to right. And then same is true for the addition and subtraction. It's not necessarily that you always add before you subtract. It's when you get to that step, you perform the addition and subtraction from left to right. With this assignment that you have on IXL, it's using order of operations with integers. So that means we are going to be having some positive and negative numbers that we're going to be dealing with. So a quick little reminder on our integer rules. If you are multiplying and dividing, so down here in the bottom in green, if the numbers have the same sign, your answer will be positive. If your numbers have different signs, your answer will be negative. And then our rules for adding are different. So it's very easy to mix them up. So that's one of the reasons we're practicing so much is practice brings that improvement. It brings that progress. So if you're adding two numbers and they have the same sign, you just simply add them and keep the sign the same. You're continuing down that same side of the number line. If the numbers that you're adding have different signs, you actually are going to think of that as subtraction because that negative is saying you're taking away. And when you take something away, that's subtraction. So you subtract your numbers and you keep the sign of the larger absolute value. Another way of saying that is you keep the sign of the heavier number. So in this example here, -5 plus 9, 9 is heavier. So that's why your answer is positive. In the second example, -13 plus 8, the -13 is heavier. There's more of them. And so that's what makes your answer a -5. And then lastly, your subtracting rules. Whenever you see a subtraction sign, I encourage you to change that to adding the opposite. So a lot of times it becomes plus a negative. And when you change that to adding the opposite, you can then come over here and just simply follow your two adding rules. All right, let's head on over to IXL so we can do some examples. All right, here we are on IXL, assignment 7YN, evaluate numerical expressions involving integers. And please remember that IXL also has an awesome video for you to watch. So if you want to see some more examples or hear it from a different voice, check that out after this one. We are being asked to evaluate this expression. I'm going to go ahead and rewrite the problem real quick so we have room to work it out. Do remember that if you want to work it out on your computer or your tablet, there is a pencil tool that allows you to do so. Or, of course, you can always use a whiteboard or scrap paper and a pencil. Okay, we have our problem written down, and then off to the left here, I have our acronym of GEMS, or sorry, our mnemonic of GEMS to help us remember the correct order. So first off is we need to see, are there any grouping symbols? I don't see any grouping symbols. There's no parentheses, brackets, absolute value bars, so that can be marked off our list. Next up, E is for exponents. Nope, no exponents. We can skip that. And then M is for multiplication or division. That we do have. So we're going to do 3 divided by 3, which would be 1, and then bring down everything else you haven't dealt with. And then last step is to add or subtract. We have that here. 1 plus 2 results in 3. So our answer here for this expression is 3. All right, second problem here, we're being told to evaluate the expression 4 minus 3 plus 3. Let's go through our steps again. First off is G for grouping symbols. Nope, I don't see anything that is grouped together by parentheses or brackets. So that's a no. E is for exponents. Nope, no exponents. M is for multiplication or division. Nope, no multiplication or division. So all we have is that last step, the S, which is for addition or subtraction. And remember, when we get to this step, it's not necessarily that we add before we subtract, or that we subtract before we add. The way that we know what we do first is we go from left to right. So the way that most books are read is from left to right. So we'll start off with 4 minus 3, which would be 1, and then 1 plus 3 gives us 4 as our final answer. All right, third problem here, evaluate the expression 4 minus 9 divided by 3. We look through our mnemonic here. G is for grouping symbols. Nope, none of those still. E is for exponents. Still a no. M is for multiplication or division. Yes, we do have that. So it is important that we start with that, meaning we'll have 9 divided by 3, which is 3, and then you bring everything else down. And so our final step is addition or subtraction. We have 4 minus 3, giving us the answer of 1. All right, let's step it up a notch here. Give us a problem that has a few more steps to it. It's a little bit longer. Do we have any grouping symbols? Nope, still a no. How about exponents? Nope. How about multiplication or division? Yeah, we have both. So which one do we do first? In this case, division's going to go first, because when you get to that multiplication or division step, you go from left to right. So we're going to start with 8 divided by 2. And that gives us 4. And we're going to bring everything else down. Now we can do 4 times 3, which is 12. And then if we get to our final step, adding or subtracting, 12 minus 3 would give us an answer of 9. Okay, let's kick it up a notch here. We see a couple different subtraction signs that we got to deal with. So first up, any grouping symbols or exponents? Nope, still none of those. How about multiplication or division? Yes, we have 10 times 5, which would be 50. And then we're going to bring everything else down. And now we need to do any addition or subtraction, and we're going to go from left to right. So 8 minus 3 would be 5. And then I'd have 5 minus 50. Well, there's a couple ways you can think about this, because when you get to 5 minus 50, you're taking away more than you started with. So one, you can just leave it and think that way in your head. Say, hey, I'm taking away more than I started with. So that means after I do my subtraction, my answer is going to have to be negative because I'm taking too much away. So 50 minus 5 would give us that negative 45. Or if that's a little tough for you to think of it that way, I'm going to come off here to the side and we'll work it out a different way. Whenever you see a subtraction sign, remember you can rewrite it to adding the opposite. So sometimes we refer to that as keep, change, change, because you keep the first number the same and then change the subtraction to addition, change the second sign to be the opposite. So that would become 5 plus negative 50. And then remember our rules for adding with integers. If the signs are the same, you add and keep the sign the same. If the signs are different, you subtract and keep the sign of the heavier number. So when we subtract, we get 45. And then your negative 50 is heavier because there's more 50s than there are 5s. And that means that's the answer. That's the sign that we keep in our answer. So no matter which way you think about it, We still get the same answer of negative 45. All right, let's do 2 more problems together, and then it'll be your turn to practice on your own. All right, evaluate the expression negative 10 divided by negative 5 plus 6 times negative 1. Do we have any grouping symbols or exponents? Nope. Cross those off. How about multiplication or division? Yes, we have both. So let's actually do this in different colors since we have a lot more here. Let's do our multiplication and division in red. So our division here, we're going to have negative 10 divided by negative 5. Remember, when you're multiplying and dividing with integers, if the signs are the same, your answer will be positive. If your signs are different, your answer will be negative. So in this case, negative 10 divided by negative 5 would give us a positive 2. And then we'll bring everything else down. Now we need to do our multiplication here. Well, when we're multiplying, we have different signs, a positive 6, a negative 1. So that means our answer will be a negative 6. And then last but not least, we need to perform our addition or subtraction. We have 2 plus a negative 6. When we're adding and subtracting, if the signs are the same, you add them and keep it the same. If your signs are different, you subtract and keep the sign from the heavier number. So our signs are different here. We're going to subtract. 6 minus 2 is 4. And then this negative 6 is heavier because there's more 6s than there are 2s, and that will result in a negative 4 as our final answer. All right, one more. Okay, evaluate the expression negative 18 divided by negative 1 plus 10 times negative 12. And we could technically, instead of using a dot, we could use parentheses to mean multiplication. Sometimes that's a little bit easier if your dots end up looking like negative signs or subtraction signs. I'm going to do that here. But remember, parentheses are kind of like a double agent. They sometimes can mean grouping symbols if there's a group of things in them. Other times they mean multiplication. Sometimes they mean both. In this case, I'm using the parentheses just simply to mean multiplication. It's showing us that we have 10 times negative 12. All right, so we don't have any true grouping symbols, no exponents. So we can start off with our multiplication and division from left to right. We have 18 divided by negative 18 divided by negative 1. A negative divided by a negative would give us a positive 18. We're going to bring everything else down. We now have our multiplication here, 10 times negative 12. The signs are different, so we're going to have a negative answer. We have a negative 120. Bring everything else down. And now we need to add. We have 18 plus negative 120. Since our signs are different, we technically are subtracting. So 120 minus 18 is 102. And then our answer will be negative because the 120 was negative, and that's the heavier number, giving us a final answer of negative 102. All right, it is your turn to hop on IXL and practice. Good luck. Really watch those positives and negatives. This is a great practice for you to work with your rules combined, the addition and subtraction ones, as well as the multiplication and division. And remember that chart that I shared with you at the beginning of the video. If you need to, rewind, scroll on back to that, take a screenshot of it, jot it down in your notes, and you can use that as you go along. All right, good luck.